I'm Bailey Godfrey, Miss Berks County 2026, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Pageant Project. My guest for this evening, I believe her time, is Bailey Godfrey, who is Miss Berks County 2026. Let me just read out her bio for you. Originally from a small town in rural Indiana, Bailey Godfrey now calls Philadelphia, Pennsylvania home. I have to remember to ask her about Philly cheesesteaks. A biochemistry and molecular biology graduate and Div 1 athlete from Wake Forest University. She is an aspiring physician currently applying to med school and working as a researcher at one of the best children's hospitals in the United States, studying gene therapy cures for sickle cell disease. I'm going to ask Bailey also how she has time to do pageants when she's applying to med school. Recently crowned Miss Berks County 2026 in the Miss America organization, Bailey uses her platform as a megaphone to share her story of growing up in a low-income household plagued by addiction and abuse. Through her advocacy, she focuses on addiction awareness and prevention while also serving as a mentor for youth who feel limited by their life circumstances like she once did. Well, Bailey, that's a lot. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here.
As I said, as we were talking a little bit before, I know that you've been following me for a while. You said you might have found us on Spotify. I'm all over the place. Was it an interview that I don't know even know if you remember, but do you remember like the first thing that you saw from me?
I don't remember the first interview I saw, but I just love to listen to podcasts, especially when I'm at work and I'm like mixing chemicals together and just doing tasks that don't require much brain injury. I can focus on other things and listen to podcasts that I like.
You're mixing chemicals. Well,
Yeah.
I hope we'll have to dig into that. I hope it doesn't distract you because then you mix the wrong chemicals.
No.
I did that once in a chem lab. We had a practical examination and we were doing titration. And so you have to get it millimetrically perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I had forgotten to write something down and I guessed, and I just happened to get it right, which the odds of that are I should have bought a lotto ticket on that day. But Bailey, I read out the bio, but why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm from rural Indiana. I grew up in a really small town. It was the type of place where you don't lock your house, you don't lock your car. All your neighbors are your best friends. There's not a single person that you don't know. And that's how I was raised. I grew up in that small blue collar style town. I went to college in North Carolina, so quite a difference from where I grew up. And I was pre-med there, so I was taking biochemistry, biology, chemistry, physics, the list goes on. All types of courses to help prepare me for medical school. And then after I graduated from Wake Forest, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew that I wasn't quite ready to take that step to apply to medical school. So I was applying to jobs all over the country. And then I surprisingly got an interview with one of the jobs at one of the best children's hospital in the country. And even more surprisingly, they offered me the job. And so I was like, I have to take this. So I went from small town rural Indiana to a little bit of a bigger city in the South. And now I live in the sixth biggest city in the country in the Northeast. So quite a big change.
Before we get into the academic side of it, what was it like moving from place to place to place? Because, you have your friends and family where you grow up and then you move and then you got new friends and then you move again, you got to make new friends. Are you someone who you get excited by moving to another place, or are you someone who goes, oh my God, I got to move again?
No, I actually get excited. I know that, one day I'm going to settle down and I'm going to stay in one place for the rest of my life. So I like the opportunity to go to different parts of the country and experience different lifestyles and meet very many diverse people, very diverse from the hometown that I grew up in. So I actually really like it.
Can you tell me, as an Australian who is trying to learn what each different state stands for, can you tell me a little fun fact about each of the places that you've lived so I can learn?
Okay. Um, Indiana is home of the Indianapolis 500. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's one
Oh,
of
right.
the biggest.
Yes.
Yes, it's one of the
Got that.
biggest races in the world. But outside of Indianapolis, which I'm not from Indianapolis, so outside of Indianapolis, it's just a bunch of cornfields. You're driving
Wow.
down the road, and if you look to your right, there's a cornfield. If you look to your left, there's a cornfield. If you look in front of you, there's a cornfield. If you look behind you, there's a soybean field, but just more fields. um, and then in North Carolina, I lived in a town that was home of Krispy Kreme, the donuts. I don't know if you have that in Australia.
We do. We do. It's not as big as it once was. It was a huge craze when it came over. But yeah, I got the Krispy Kremes.
Yeah. And then Philadelphia is home to, the Philly cheesesteaks. The Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. And then as well as, home of the first children's hospital in the United States, which is where I work. And, the birthplace of our country. So much history here.
I need to learn more about that. It's funny that it's always a pageant interview because you describe the states via food or food-like items. So
Yeah.
it's all corn. Is it the whole state is growing corn?
Sometimes there's soybean fields, but for the most part, it's corn. And it's really ironic because up until this past year, I didn't like corn.
Okay. Is that because you were surrounded by it and it just the thought of it made you slightly nauseated, or is it you just didn't like corn from the start?
I just didn't like it from the start. I was a really picky eater. But then I competed at the National Sweetheart Pageant, which takes place at the same time as the National Sweet Corn Festival. So had to eat some corn. And that's when I realized that actually I like this.
You know what's funny about that is that you're the second person who told me that. Second person who didn't like corn, but then needed to compete at the Sweet Corn Festival and then realized maybe sweet corn isn't quite as bad. I mean, all right, so corn on the cob, popcorn, tinned corn. Are we liking, hating all of them? I asked this because someone said they hated tinned corn because it reminded them of teeth, like loose teeth.
Oh,
I don't know. People have weird thoughts about corn. We've gone off the rails already. But why didn't you like corn? You just didn't like the way it tasted?
I just was a really picky eater, and my family, wasn't the healthiest eater, so we didn't really like any vegetables or any fruits, and that's something that I'm like trying to get over now as an adult to learn to love vegetables and fruits. So it wasn't like anything specific to corn. It was probably just the fact that it was a vegetable.
Right. Okay. How difficult was it for yourself to get used to living in a big city after growing up in a smaller, more rural town?
Oh my gosh. It was very, very difficult. Not only just the fact of like moving from a small town to like a big city, it's also like a different part of the country. So the culture here is very, very different. And, Philly is known for being a very passionate city and has a lot of feelings, a lot of those feelings being anger. We really love our sports teams. We don't like it when they lose. And our drivers are very, very, very aggressive. Anytime I'm on the road, they see my Indiana license plate and they're like, this girl doesn't know what she's doing. We're going to lay on the horn 24/7.
Really, I didn't know this about. So hang on, is this Philadelphia specifically, or is it Pennsylvania?
Oh, no, it's just Philadelphia specifically.
Right. Okay. So you guys are very, very passionate, are you?
Yes.
So what was it like when you said the team won the Super Bowl. What was that like the night of that? I mean, it would have been like don't leave the home.
I left the home. It was definitely a night to remember. Leading up to the Super Bowl, the city was greasing poles like that hold lights and signs because people climb the poles and the signs. And when we won the Super Bowl, everybody stormed on Broad Street, which is actually where I live right now. So I'm glad that we didn't win the Super Bowl this year.
Don't tell people that we don't want you getting dogs.
Sorry. It's
Continue.
a big street. Don't worry. It's a big street. So I'm glad that we didn't have people storming the street, but everybody in the city was out on that street hooting and hollering all night long.
So hang on, they greased the poles so that people couldn't climb up. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, and they still climbed up. They found a way.
Only in America, Bailey. That's. Can I just ask, what were they greasing up the poles with?
good question. I don't know, actually.
Just sorry, it's a silly question. I've never seen anyone going around just greasing poles so that people don't climb them up. How did you get? I mean, you mentioned that you worked in. Was it the first children's hospital in the United
Hmm.
States? Can you give me a
Yes.
bit of background into that? Because I haven't heard of that. Obviously, with the volunteer system, I've heard a lot about St. Jude's, but being the
Hmm.
first children's hospital, that's not a story that I'm familiar with. So can you tell me more?
Yeah, I work at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is the first children's hospital in the country, and it's one of the best children's hospital in the country. When I've shadowed my boss, who's a physician, I've seen patients that have disorders and diseases that have been documented in literature less than 20 times. And I've seen patients who have traveled from as far as Cambodia to receive care. And I've also been in the same room as baby KJ. I don't know if anybody has heard this story, but baby KJ is the first patient in the world to receive personalized gene therapy. And he did it right here at CHOP. CHOP is the acronym for the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So it's just an incredible place, and so many miracles are made there every single day. And in fact, my lab actually works in partnership with St. Jude a lot too.
Sure. I mean, it's good to see that they're working together. You always want to see these sorts of places cooperating rather than competing. You need to back up because I am a science nerd, former science nerd. Was it personalized gene therapy? Did you say?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Walk me through this. What that means in layperson's terms, and what the steps are and what the outcome is, because this sounds borderline science fiction.
It does, it really does. So for baby KJ, he was born with this really rare genetic condition that was incompatible with life. He was born, but he was not expected to live for very much longer. And scientists at Children's Hospital, a lot of those scientists are people I work with. I actually sit right next to one of his doctors. But scientists had been working on creating gene therapy, which is, going in and correcting somebody's disease in their genetics and their DNA. And the scientists have been working on that for a a long time, for like personalized for people born with specific genetic
Yeah.
diseases. And when baby KJ was born, they really weren't sure what to do, but they decided to give it a shot anyways. And that was their only chance. And it worked. And he's alive. He's 1 year old. He was learning how to crawl. That's how I met him. I was walking down in the lobby and I saw a little baby walking around with TV cameras following him. And they just, scientists, I don't want to understate that scientists had been putting in a lot of work leading up to this, but something like this had never been done before.
Right. Did you get to interact with his parents at all?
No, but I did see them.
Because I'm just wondering. I mean, I don't know if you watch medical dramas. Maybe as an aspiring med student, that's something you want to stay away from. But there was a long-running medical sitcom called Scrubs, and it just got rebooted like maybe last week or so. And so back in the original series, they were all fresh-faced interns, had no idea. Now, 20 years later on the reboot, they're a lot older, and this sort of symptom of being jaded in the medical system, because in many medical systems it's about just saying patient, 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 patient. You need to only spend 5 minutes with them and then kick them out because it's about the money, unfortunately, and medical care can be extraordinarily expensive. And I just like hearing stories like this because, I mean, you've obviously radically a whole group of people, not just yourself, but have radically altered the course of young KJ's life. Not that he would probably know at the age of 1, right?
Yeah, he's a celebrity now and he doesn't even know it.
What are the steps involved? Like how much research, if he's the very first, how much research was there leading up to this point? And now that it's been demonstrated, I am assuming that it can be done. I'm assuming more of it's going to be done in the future, but just how much research led up to this point?
Oh, we're talking about so much research, so many years of this. At least for me, I work in hematology and we do gene therapy cures for sickle cell disease. And there in 2023, the FDA approved the first ever gene therapy for sickle cell disease. But leading up to that, we're talking about a lot of my experiments, I grow on stem cells. I do experiments using stem cells. I have mice that I take care of, and we do experiments with them as well. You do experiments with you start with like an immortalized cell line is what it's called. It's just cells that we took out of the human body that can grow and grow and grow forever, and then you move to actual cells that are actually from a person, and these aren't immortalized. Sorry, I'm getting like a little bit into the scientific jargon. And then we also do
No,
like the
I'm
mouse
liking
stuff.
this.
So it's like a process. You start with the immortalized cells, then you move to what's called primary cells, where they're directly from a patient, and then you move to the mice models.
No, I like having discussions like this because it keeps my brain somewhat active. I laughed when you said a hematologist, because that's what my father is/was. Literally, he's a hematologist. So I know about certain terms such as sickle cell, leukemia, lympho, like all these terms. And I come from a whole family of doctors. I'm the only one who's not. So my father is a hematologist. My mother's what we call here in Australia a general practitioner, or a GP. So that's like the family doctor. And my brother is the same. I'm the odd one out. Never became a doctor. What does a typical day for you look like? I ask because, you always see these get ready with me TikTok things, and, people getting all glammed up and then they do their thing. How much of your time is spent, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to guess, I could be wrong, lab coat, staring in a microscope, maybe looking at slides, maybe pipettes? I don't know. What does a day in your life look like?
I'd say that's about 60 to 70% of my day at work. I usually go in and I have these stem cells that I take care of, and I like to joke around. I'm a cell mama. I got to take care of my kids, make sure that they're growing, they're dividing, they're healthy, giving them food, make sure they have all the nutrients so that they can be healthy and we can perform experiments on them. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of this technique called Western blot, where you look at all the proteins in a cell and you want to look at a specific one. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, and you pinpoint that specific one to see what's happening to that protein when you run an experiment. So I do that a lot. And then I also work with mice. I wean them sometimes. So like when the baby mice are called pups. So when pups are old enough to be separated from mom, I separate them from mom. And, if any of the pups or the mice are sick, I have to unfortunately euthanize them. But, that's in their best interest. And then every now and then I'll dissect them too. So I get to play surgeon a little.
Where are you planning, maybe, I don't know, in 5 years' time? I don't know how long the career projection goes. I mean, here in Australia, it takes maybe roughly, if you want to be a specialist doctor, you're talking probably at least 10 years. You're so knee-deep, it seems, in the research side of things. Are you wanting to stay in that side of it? Because that side of it sounds fascinating to me. Or are we going to move into the more patient-facing, face-to-face side?
I really love people, so I really want to do more of the patient face-to-face side. Unfortunately, a lot of times with being a physician, you really can't separate that research aspect of it, and
Yeah.
not unfortunately, that's a good thing. We should have physicians doing research and advancing cures and treatments. But I would like to in the future do that, but maybe do it more clinical, because what I do right now is mainly me in a lab coat in a lab and with pipettes and microscopes. I don't really see patients very often.
Right. Is there a particular piece of lab equipment that you really love, about like never leave home without it? I didn't spend that much time in the lab unless you count, high school and college. But is there like a favorite piece of equipment, a least favorite piece of equipment?
No, but we have these like tissue culture hoods where we take care of ourselves. We have to keep it in a sterile environment. So in the lab, I have my favorites that I go to very often. But other than that, not really picky.
That's fair. Why don't you tell us how you got interested in the medical field to begin with? My experience has been, well, in school, unfortunately, here in Australia, getting into med school was like the very highest mark that you could get into after high school. And so I came from a very academically competitive school. And so a lot of my peers went into medicine simply because it was the highest one. And then, unsurprisingly, a year later, a lot of them, probably 50% of them, burnt out because they didn't enjoy it. They hadn't thought, well, just because it's a highest mark doesn't mean that you should be doing it. But then I found that other people get into medicine a lot of the time because they want to help save lives, make a difference, as cliche as that might sound. But that's what doctors very much do. I mean, we all take our health for granted until, it's not there. So what got you interested in the medical field?
So I come from a family where nobody was in healthcare. In fact, I'm the first person on my dad's side of the family to have a college degree. Everybody on my dad's side of the family are blue collar farmers. My dad was a truck driver. His dad was a truck driver. So I was really the first person in my family to pursue this path. And what actually started it was my dad, in fact. My dad is an alcoholic. He started drinking when he was 8 years old, and he's now 64. So he's been drinking for over 40 years straight. And that obviously takes a toll on the human body. And when I was 2016, so about 10 years ago, was the first time my dad was hospitalized for consequences related to addiction. And I remember that moment so vividly. It was so scary, not knowing what's going to happen to your dad. But at the same time, I just was so fascinated by these ER doctors' knowledge of this beautifully complex human body and, how to fix it when it all goes wrong, especially in the case of
Mm,
alcoholism, where it affects every single system in your body.
yeah.
And not only that, I was really admired their compassion as well. Growing up in that small town where everybody knows everybody, everybody knew that my parents were addicts. And because of that, they treated both them and me differently. And so for the first time in my life, watching the physicians work on my dad was the first time where I was able to see people see him as the person that I know and love, to see him as somebody that's deserving of love, dignity, and respect, just as much as anybody else that walks through those hospital doors. And that really left a lasting impression on me. I think the role of being a physician is so unique because you not only have the ability to make somebody feel physically better, but you can also make
Mm.
them feel seen and heard at the same time. And that's really what draws me to medicine.
Can you This is a very complex, maybe even slightly unfair question. But when dealing with addicts, I've interviewed several pageant contestants, and in fact, even for my book, several people who either had addicted addicts as parents or addicts as partners. And for me, it's an incredibly complicated and difficult situation for everyone involved because anyone in sort of the social circle it is affected by it. But being a daughter of addicts, so being the child, might be the most complicated and difficult position to be put in because obviously you're supposed to have the parents. The parents are the ones who are supposed to be responsible, take care of you, look after you, and yet here you are. You've become the first one on your father's side, as you said, who went to college, which is amazing. Props to you. That must have been really difficult when you're coming from that blue collar sort of family, and nothing against it because that they literally grow everything that we eat. But that it must have been incredibly difficult for yourself growing up, or maybe I don't know, maybe you just soldiered on and weren't aware of it.
No, you're right. It was incredibly difficult. Yeah.
Was there anything that you think people need to understand when it comes to addicts? Because I know that you already mentioned there's a bit of I don't know if it's a bit stigma. I don't know if stigma is the correct
Mhm.
word, but I think sometimes people around mental health or even certain physical disabilities can feel like, oh, I don't know what to say, or they treat people differently. If you had a chance to just say anything to people, what's one thing perhaps that people don't understand about addicts?
You're right. Stigma is the correct word. There is a lot of stigma surrounding it. A lot of people still think of addicts as a moral failing, when in reality, it is a disease. In fact, there's a genetic component, there's an environmental component.
Mm,
There's so many risk factors that go into somebody becoming an addict. Like when you start drinking underage, you are at increased likelihood of developing addiction. If you have a mental health disorder, you're also at an increased likelihood of developing addiction. If you have something like Tourette's, you're also at an increased likelihood of developing
right.
addiction because it helps calm tics. So there's so many factors that go into it. And whenever I talk about my dad, I always make sure to share, the the truth, the good, the
Mm.
bad, and the ugly, but especially the good. And it's so important in helping people get past the idea that there's a moral failing, that there's something wrong with this person. And I'm really close with my dad. I love my dad so much. And one of my favorite stories that I like to share about him to remind people that, you can be an addict and you can be a good person is how growing up, like I said, he was a truck driver, which is a very dangerous job. And
Yeah.
so every single day before he would leave for work, he would come into my bedroom and, as a kid, make me a big old glass of chocolate milk, kiss me and hug me and tell me how much he loved me in case he didn't make it home today. And
Yeah.
that's just one of the many stories about how my dad is such an amazing and such a sweet human being. And a lot of people don't realize that about addicts.
Yeah. I think all of us human beings are deeply complicated and very often deeply flawed. And I just get very uncomfortable around anyone who's very judgmental because, when you're judging other people, it's not like you're perfect and you are completely without flaws. And, if you're blessed with good health, as you mentioned, there's multiple factors that go into that. And a lot of it simply is you were born into a certain family, but you didn't get to choose that. And so how did you we'll segue very subtly, but how on earth did you get into pageantry? And give us a timeline. So you said 2016 was roughly the time you got interested in medicine. So when and how did pageantry enter the equation?
So I actually started when I was 9 years old. My hometown had this summer festival every year, and they had a little pageant for the little girls in the hometown. And the way that they marketed this pageant was they'd go into every single elementary school and print out a flyer on a pink piece of paper, which already sold me. And then they marketed it as you get the opportunity to dress up like a princess for a day. So I was like, absolutely sold. I wanted to do that so bad. And I remember going home and asking my parents if I could do this. And they said, absolutely not. No way are we letting you do this. They unfortunately had like a lot of the negative stereotypes about pageants in their head. So they didn't want me to put me through that. But apparently, I was such an annoying kid that I would not shut up to the point where they had to give in. And I remember when my dad finally gave in, and it was like a $40 entry fee. He's like, "You're going to have to give me a lot of cheek kisses to make up for this." And I was like, "Don't worry, I got it." And I did one pageant. I got bit by the bug. I really fell in love. And a lot of my favorite childhood memories actually come from doing that pageant. Like I said, I don't come from the best family background, but competing was really what brought my entire family together. My grandma would come to my pageants and she'd sit there with an attendance list and she'd check it off and make sure everybody was showing up. And then even like leading up to it, like picking out my dress, she'd invite all the women in my family over to her house and we'd have a fashion show and they'd do my hair and makeup and I'd try on these different dresses and we'd pick out what I was going to wear. So a lot of my favorite childhood memories come from competing. And I think that's what initially drew me to pageants. And then as I got older, I started branching out into more of the interview style pageants, the ones that are service and scholarship oriented. And that was when my dad's, health started to turn for the worst. And when you grow up in a family plagued by addiction, the number one rule is whatever you do, you don't talk about it. And I lived by that rule up until my dad's health really started to take a toll and we couldn't keep it a secret anymore.
Mm.
And pageants really became this outlet for me to turn something so painful into like a purpose to help others, to make a difference, to create the change I'd like to see in the world. And it became so rewarding to, I guess, take something so painful and make something good out of it. So that's why I continue to compete.
How did you go about that first time that you wanted to address it? How did you go about doing that? Because whether it's addiction or mental health struggles, very often, I feel sometimes with like if you have a physical, very visible, let's say a disability, it's a bit, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to talk about it because people can see it. I find with what, let's call them invisible illnesses, so maybe depression, anxiety, Tourette's, addiction, people can't see it directly. And so sometimes there's a bit of a stigma when you're addressing. I mean, how did you go about doing it? Because that must be quite confronting or nerve-wracking when you're going to address something publicly for the first time, right?
Yeah, I remember the first time I actually talked about it. It was my junior year of high school. So at this time, I think my dad had gone on to be hospitalized 4 or 5 times for
Right.
different things related to addiction. And my English teacher gave us an essay where we had to write about something that has impacted us. And I felt, for some reason, I don't know why, but very compelled in that moment to talk about alcohol and its effects on my dad and my family
Mm.
and myself. And I then, for some reason, I don't know where I got this courage from, but I decided to read it in front of my class. And I thought
Wow.
it was going to be this inspirational, motivational piece. I thought there were going to be so many people that could relate to it because as of right now, 1 in 4 children in the United States are growing up with at least one parent with
Wow.
substance abuse. So I was expecting it to be this motivational, inspiring story. And I actually got quite a different response. A lot of people told me that they didn't think that I should be talking about something so taboo. And even
Mm.
worse, there were people that thought I was making it up for attention because, in their mind, there's a lot of stereotypes around children like me who grow up with adversity, who grow up with a dysfunctional family, who grow up with parents who are addicts. There's a lot of stereotypes that come with that. And with me being a straight A student, a varsity cheerleader, I didn't fit those
Mm.
stereotypes. So
Yeah.
in their mind, if I didn't fit in the box, then the box couldn't be true. And so that was a really hard thing for me to hear. And it actually forced me into being silent about my dad's addiction for a couple more years, up until I was a freshman in college when my dad's health, he had been hospitalized several times at this point, but at
Mm.
that time, my freshman year, he was on what doctors truly thought was going to be his deathbed, and he was in the ICU for 4 weeks. And in a situation like that, that's when you turn to your loved ones, your friends, your family for support.
Mm.
And I couldn't do that without sharing that my dad's an addict. And
Yeah.
that really started to harm me and do more harm than good by keeping that secret. And my mental health started to take a toll. My classes, my
Mm.
grades in my classes started to also take a toll. And that's really when I realized that staying silent was doing more harm than good. And that's when I vowed to share my story. And that's when I created my community service initiative. That's when I took it into pageantry. Before that, my community service initiative had something to do with confidence. I don't even remember, but it wasn't something I was truly passionate about. But that was what inspired me to create my community service initiative.
I think I mean, in part, it was almost like you had no choice when you decided to address it for the second time. But I also think that first time, given the reception that you got, that must have knocked, as you said, you didn't speak about it again for another couple of years. That you said you read it out loud. I have an oddly
Yeah.
specific question. Do you remember the facial expressions of the people listening whilst you were reading it out loud?
I don't remember because I had a piece of paper, so I was looking down, but
Yeah.
I did get a non part of the way my teacher had set it up was we had each of us were required to write notes to at least 3 speakers. So
Right.
I did receive notes, and that's some of them were like saying you shouldn't talk about this, but I also did receive notes from people who did come from a situation like mine, and they
Yeah.
thought it was really brave that I was speaking up about it, and they felt really they related a lot to my story.
Mm.
But in that scenario, I was just so scared by the negatives that I really didn't listen to the people
Yeah.
that actually were encouraging me to speak about it.
That the statistic that you quoted is hugely alarming for me. I didn't know. So you said 1 in 4 have at least 1 in 4
Yes.
children in the United States have at least one parent who's dealing with some form of, is it addiction or substance addiction specifically?
Substance use disorder is the word that they use. A few years back, it used to be 1 in 8, but recently they changed the statistic
Wow.
to 1 in 4.
Okay, so maybe this is a good time then to segue into your CSI, and maybe before we go specifically into your CSI, because you always want to know that there are resources out there, because it's one thing to create awareness, but then it's like, okay, well, what steps can I take? And I always feel, especially for children, because children are supposed to be children, you're supposed to be the child, and the parents are supposed to be the boring, responsible ones. But sometimes life doesn't quite work that way, and life takes its own detours. But tell people more about your CSI to begin with.
Yes, so my CSI is called From Adversity to Advocacy. I, named it in honor of my own adversity and how I was able to find a voice in it to make a difference. And I use it to not only raise awareness for addiction, advocate for prevention, just change the way we view addiction, as well as a lot of supporting children and families that are affected by substance abuse.
Are there any resources, as I mentioned, are there any resources that you're aware of that can help children who might have one or both parents struggling with addiction?
My favorite resource and the most underused resource, in my opinion, in the United States, and I think it actually is international. We have something called Al Anon. So it's a branch
Mm.
of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's meant for people who have a loved one that is suffering from addiction, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a friend or spouse, no matter who it is. It's meant for anybody that has a loved one suffering from addiction. And then they also have an Alateen version that's meant for younger kids
Mm.
ages 19 and below that have a parent or friend or anybody that's suffering from addiction. And a lot of times they're held in local churches, and it's just a chance to get around people that know what it's like, because it's so easy to feel so alone in your
Yeah.
struggles. And it's so important to know that, you're not alone. 1 in 4 people know what it's like.
Did you manage to have any of those resources available to you? I mean, were any of those resources available to you when you were growing up, or did you make it through on your own?
I made it through on my own. Unfortunately, in a small town, stuff like that was not
Sure.
available. And that's such a reason why I compete in pageantry. I didn't have anybody that I knew that came from a background like mine. I didn't have a positive role model to look up to show me
Yeah.
that your circumstances that you were born into don't define you. In fact, the only people that I did know that came from similar situations to me were actually other family members that chose to follow down their parents' footsteps in addiction. My dad is an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic, and probably because
Right.
his dad was an alcoholic. And so for a long period of my life, I thought that that was my destiny, and there was nothing
Yeah.
I could say or do to change that. And obviously that's not true. You are the only person that is capable of writing your own story. And that's why I love to use the crown to be that role model that I needed growing up, but also to share these resources that I didn't know existed, that weren't available to me when I was a kid.
It's I don't quite know how to phrase this question, but as you mentioned, very often with things like alcoholism, even with things like cancer, it runs in the family, right? And so you can always have this generational curse or family curse, and it's almost assured that you'll fall into the same trap. It's not guaranteed, but the odds, I don't need to tell you, I'm sure you know, maybe it's 20%, 50%, two times, five times, 10 times, whatever it is. You grew up in a small town, both parents addicts. As you said, you were struggling to find any positive role models. How on earth did you manage to find yourself where you are right now? You've got, you got your college degree, you've got a bright future by any stretch of the imagination in front of you, and here you are, in your crown, you're doing well in pageants, and life just looks so far removed from what you described. And that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking the person who managed to go from the origin story to where you are now. How on earth did you manage to do that?
From a young age, I knew something wasn't right about my family. I couldn't, pinpoint what exactly was going on. I just knew that things weren't normal. And I knew from a young age that was not the life that I wanted for myself. And I was always a big dreamer from a kid. I remember playing with my Barbie dolls and like creating futures that were greater than anything that I could imagine. But when I started high school, like I said, that's when my father's health started to take a toll. And that's when things became less normal. It got to the point where my dad would come home from work and he'd go to the bar. My mom would disappear. I'd have to cook food for my brother if there was food. There was a period of time where I was taking pain medication to help ease an empty stomach because I was having stomach aches from not having food. And around that time was when you're a freshman in high school and you're starting to think about the next steps. And that's when I realized that, education can be my escape. And that's when
Hmm.
I vowed, that I was going to do whatever it takes. I was going to do good in school because at that point, up until then, I was a B and C student. I did
Right.
not care about school, but I told myself that I was going to work hard in the classroom and out of the classroom and do whatever it takes so that I can get into any college that I want. And that college could be as far away from home as I want. And that's exactly what I did. I graduated with the top 10 highest GPA in my high school class. I graduated with the most amount of scholarships. I got a full tuition scholarship to Wake Forest University, which at the time was a top 30 university and had only 20% acceptance rate. And
Wow.
while I was at Wake Forest, that's really when I learned how to be myself.
Yeah.
In that small town, everybody just knew me as the daughter of so and so.
Yeah.
And at Wake Forest was the first time in my life where I got to be known for me. And that was really the turning point for me.
Can you describe that period of your life? Because we talked about some incredibly heavy and deep and serious stuff. But that journey of self-discovery, it's almost like, I don't know, I guess you were 18 or 19 at the time, and maybe you're finally thinking, oh, who do I want to be now? I don't have to be the person who is taking the pain medication because there was no food in the pantry. What was that like? Because it's almost like you had that delayed, maybe 12 or 13-year-old period where, other people are discovering themselves. You had that put off until you were 18 or 19. What was that period like? Was it joyful, exciting, confusing?
All of the above. I definitely had a hard time, trying to figure out who I am. And there was a lot of growth that I had to do that, I didn't have the luxury of thinking about who I was when I was a kid because I was so worried about my parents and what
Yeah.
they were doing. But when I was in college, I really got to explore and just have the full college experience. I studied abroad in London. I lived in London for 5 months. I visited 8 different countries while I was there. I was a Division I cheerleader, so I got to be an athlete in college. While also, being a pre-med student, I was in a sorority for a period of time. So I really just got to take in all the experiences, and all of those made me who I am.
What did you think of the English weather? You said you were living in London. How'd you find that?
I don't mind the rain. I know that it's really gloomy, but I think there's something quite charming about being able to, I guess, maybe it's because of my background, just like being able to find joy in the darkness, being able to see the beauty in the gloominess of London. I liked it.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, given your upbringing and given your childhood, it doesn't surprise me that you could probably find something joyful, something to be grateful for in any moment where other people are just complaining, well, it's raining and it's cold again. But here you are, you're like, well, you don't know where I came from, and this is a lot better than where I came from. So you went through that. What do you do for fun? Because I'm just curious. Because so you moved to what was it called? Forest
Wake
University.
Forest.
Wake Forest University, and here you are. You sort of get to define who you are. Did you find that you had hobbies or interests or things that you wanted to do for fun that you had never been able to do before?
I definitely got, since graduating, I have a lot more free time. I definitely got more interested in just exploring. There's so many things Philly has to offer. I love going out and trying different foods from different countries. Like I said, my hometown's not very diverse. So here
Right.
in Philly, I've had Israeli food. There's a Moroccan food place somewhere I just learned about, getting to see so different people and experience different cuisines and different cultures. I love that. But I also love music. I started playing the flute when I was 12 or something. So it's been like 13 or so years. So I love being able to play my flute. And I also picked up the violin, and I'm trying to self-teach myself how to play the violin, but it's not going very well over here.
Do you want some lessons? Because I am qualified as a violin teacher, although I've never actually taught anyone. Do you mean classical violin or like country style fiddle?
Classical violin.
You're trying to self-teach, are you? I taught myself tennis, so I shouldn't be laughing. We can have a discussion. Are you doing a particular method, or you just like YouTube video and then you try and copy it? Are you sheet music? Are you doing scales? What's your approach here?
Well, fortunately, with knowing how to play the flute, I already know how to read music. So I've been using a lot of books and using sheet music from books and like the self-taught type books where they teach you how to play a scale. But they teach you how to play the notes. The technique aspect of it, probably not good.
What's the most advanced thing that you can play on the violin at this moment?
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Okay. How long have you been doing this for?
October.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's only 5 months. I was going to say you've been doing this for a few years, and okay. Right. We all have to start somewhere. Violin, I will tell you, violin and flute, because I spent a lot of time around orchestras. You've picked two of the harder instruments, because flute, the technique is, as we call you, flautists. That's the noun, by the way. If you're watching, you don't know what that is, but it's not a flute player, it's a flautist. The way that you guys have to have your lips, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can describe it. Even to make a sound on a flute, it's not like one of those ones where, like a recorder, where you just blow into it and it makes a sound. Isn't there a certain shape that you need to make with your lips or your tongue or something to even make a sound?
Yeah, it's called embouchure. It's just the way that you purse your lips. Like, I'll show you. That's like how I do it. And then like you can direct the air. So like sometimes I can feel the air down here, and then I can direct it up. And so like for the higher notes, you want to direct the air higher. For lower notes, you want to direct the air lower. And then also like the speed of the air changes the frequency of your note. So there's, like you said, a lot of technique, a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, no, it's not an easy instrument to play at all. So are you doing violin as talent then for your next pageant?
100%. No, absolutely not. I'll be playing the flute.
Right. Is there a particular piece that you'd like to be able to play on the violin, or you're just doing it out of curiosity?
There's a piece called from the instrumental group called Bond, I think that's the name. They have this piece called Explosive. It's like 4 violins, and they're playing in this quartet that I've always admired. I've thought about playing it on the flute, but the flute really doesn't do it as much justice as a violin would do it.
The weird thing is I know exactly the group you're talking about and exactly the piece, because I became obsessed with them. Because growing up, you're playing the violin, you're always kind of like the nerdy one, and you just want at one point to feel like, oh, I'm the popular cool kid. And then you see Bond, and it's like, oh, wow, you can actually make the violin sound cool. That's not the easiest piece to play. It's not the most difficult. But, maybe by this time next year, we'll be able to get you there. How is when are you competing in pageants next?
June 15th through the 20th is Miss Pennsylvania.
Right. So at this stage, how is pageant prep looking for you? Do you have, how are you fitting it into your busy schedule?
Well, I was just crowned less than a month ago, so pageant prep is mainly looking about like trying to get into my community, trying to serve Berks County. It's a little difficult for me because I am not originally from Berks County. I'm not even originally from Pennsylvania. So it's getting in contact with the organizations, getting to know the community, getting to know the people, finding ways to promote my CSI. So that's what a lot of pageant prep looks like right now is mainly service focused. And then probably starting the next couple weeks, I'll start thinking about all the other fun stuff.
Right. So it's about three months away. I'm trying to keep tabs on all you guys with your upcoming competitions, and they all seem to be in June, July. Seems to be peak season because we've got MVA coming up, I think, in June as well, and then I think Miss Teen Volunteer is happening next week. So it's
Yes.
all hands on deck at the moment. Bailey, just before we move towards the final 10 questions, is there anyone that you want to say thank you to or give a shout out to for supporting you along your journey?
I definitely want to shout out my cheer coach Annie, and she's more than a cheer coach. We look like sisters. We basically are sisters. We're best friends. But like I said, I didn't have any positive role models that came from the background like mine to grow up to. But when I started college, that's when I met Annie, who also competes in pageants. She had competed in the Miss America organization. She was actually one of the first local title holders in the Tennessee volunteer organization before it became Miss Volunteer America.
Right.
So we have so much in common, and she really has been such a role model for me since I have met her, because she comes from a background like mine. And if you meet her, she is the biggest ray of sunshine and joy, and I look up to her so much because it's so easy to get tied up in the circumstances that you were born into, to experience that darkness. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 19, and so it's easy to get a little caught up in that. But I love having her as this role model that shows me that you can choose joy no matter what your circumstances are. So big thanks to her.
What's her surname?
Anne McKay Sandalovich is her surname. She's Annie Forbes now.
Right. Okay. I'll keep an eye out for her if I'm over at MVA. I don't know if she'll be there, but Tennessee is where it's held, so I'll keep an eye out for her. All right. Let's go through these final 10 questions, Bailey. Number 1, what is your favorite word?
Oh. You always get me with these questions. I'd say crazy. I don't know. I just love people that are just out of the box and, weird and not your ordinary type person. That's what I always strive to be.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't. Or no. Don't like it when people tell me I can't do something, or no, makes me want to do it even more.
Every one of you answers with can't or no. They all get their lower lip jutting out. You can just tell. Like if you were told as a young girl, no, you can't have the ice cream, you'd be like, oh, no. You're going to argue your way until you get this. Number 3, in life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
I think I'm going to have to go back to that crazy. I love, especially crazy stories. I love hearing people's crazy stories, and I love creating my own crazy stories. My biggest goal in life is to one day, when I'm 80 years old and I am telling my grandkids all these stories about, say, like when I studied abroad in London, or I spent a night in a prison in Sweden, and it was a hotel, not an actual prison, but I spent a night in a prison in Sweden. Just these crazy stories. I want my future grandkids to look at me and think, wow, this lady is bonkers. And that's when I know that I have made it in life.
Thank you for clarifying that it was a hotel and you weren't actually arrested in Sweden. The next question would have to be, what on earth were you arrested in Sweden for? If you ever come down to Australia, here in Sydney, there's actually a place, because Australia was originally established as a penal colony for the Brits, and quarantine was a big thing back then because of Black Plague and things like that. And so there's literally what's called quarantine station down near the harbour, and that's where everyone had to stay if they had any symptoms of disease. And so a lot of people died there, and there's a lot of people buried there, and it's now like this very famous haunted not haunted house, but haunted grounds. And I went there, and you take a haunted tour at night, and you see autopsy tables, and it's just very unsettling. And you can now stay there if you're crazy enough. You can stay there overnight as a hotel stay. So if you want to add another crazy, that's above my pay grade, by the way. I'm happy to take the tour. There is no way that I'm going to stay there overnight. But that's something that you could do.
I would 100% do that in a heartbeat. I've gone on ghost tours before. I love haunted places.
What was it like staying in a jail?
Well, it wasn't that exciting because it was a jail for like petty thefts, you know. So
Oh,
you
right.
stayed in like yeah, you stayed in a prisoner's room and they told you what prisoner used to live there and what crime they committed, and most of the time it was just like thievery, so nothing too crazy.
Right. Okay. That's not the case with this quarantine station. They people were, dissected there. I mean, I know it's painted on. It's not the actual. I hope it's not the actual blood stains, but it just. I mean, if you like ghost things, maybe you'll enjoy that more than I did. I wasn't able to sleep for a week afterwards, and I'm a grown man. I had to go around with all the lights switched on. It was something else. Anyway, my phobias aside, that was what turns you on. What about question 4? What turns you off?
Mm. I guess I'd have to say, and this is a very psychology term that I learned while studying for my medical college admissions test, but I don't like it when people have what's called an external locus of control, where, and I say that because I used to have it, where, like in my situation, there was a period of time where I blamed anybody and everybody for the life that I was born into.
Mm,
I was angry with the world. I constantly asked, God, why me? Why are you doing this to me? But as I got older, I really learned that to take the reins of my own life, that I can create the life that I wanted, even though I wasn't born into the life that I wanted. And so I guess it's that little victim mentality that really turns me off. And like I said, the reason why I don't like it is because I once had it
yeah.
myself.
I mean, you had every logical reason to have it out of anyone that I've ever interviewed, and the fact that you managed to overcome it is amazing to me. So, external locus of control got you on that one. Number 5, what sound or noise do you love?
I have a really hard time falling asleep. So I sometimes, this is so niche, I listen to ASMR. And I like it when people do the little like tippy taps on different objects with like their fake nails. I like that sound.
Okay. You have difficulties falling asleep, and yet you want to go to this haunted quarantine station to stay overnight.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's just
Now I
one of
see
the
why.
many crazy things I want to do.
Now I see why your favorite word is crazy. It all makes complete sense. I have difficulty sleeping. Let me sleep in a haunted house. Number 6, what sound or noise do you hate?
Going back to that ASMR, some people, I don't know how much you know about it, but people do like videos of them eating food. I really don't like
No,
those, but it's yeah, but especially like some people will like be slurping food that's not meant to be slurped. I don't like the slurping sound.
no, I don't need to know what's going on inside anyone's mouth. I don't like chewing sounds. I will tell
Exactly.
you one of the weird things. At least this is in Chinese culture. When you drink soup, to show that you enjoy it, you actually have to
Mm.
slurp. And so if you go to a Chinese restaurant, at least a genuine Chinese one, not a heavily westernized one, and there's a lot of Chinese people in there, if there's soup, all you'll hear is that really wet slurpy sound, and they have to show that. Otherwise, it's rude. Whereas if you go to a Western restaurant and you're doing that, you're probably going to get kicked out. But no, I'm not going to do the chewing sounds. I'll leave that up to other people. Number 7, if you could have any superpower, what would you pick and why?
I want to be able to fly so that I could travel more. I know that I said that I've been to eight or so, I have lost track, but eight or so countries. But, growing up, we didn't have the funds to go on vacations when I was a kid. So I've always just been so excited about, like as I going to different parts of the country, living in different parts of the country, living in different parts of the world. That excites me so much.
Just off the top of your head, which countries can you remember visiting? I mean, we already got we got the UK, we got Sweden. Which are the other ones?
Mhm. I studied abroad in France for 3 weeks with a host family.
Oh,
Did 5 months in London. I went to Edinburgh in Scotland, Vienna in Austria, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, Copenhagen in Denmark, Stockholm in
wow.
Sweden. um, Brussels in Belgium, and Toronto in Canada. So that's 9, I guess.
So you like all the cold places then?
I guess so.
That's all like Arctic Circle level. It's all like when it's winter, you get 2 hours of sunlight, if any. Okay. You said you spent 3 weeks in France. Do you speak any French? Do you speak any other languages?
I do speak French. I'm a little rusty. I took it for 6 years, but it's been a while.
Wow.
Other than that, no other languages.
I took it for 4 years, and all I know is bonjour, ça va. That's when it comes to speaking. That's ça va bien, you know. All right. So number 8, what job other than your own would you most like to attempt?
I was actually thinking about this yesterday because I was shadowing a physician in the neonatal ICU. So I was
Hmm.
around a bunch of really premature babies, and I was thinking I admire nurses a lot, but I don't think that I could do their job with the changing the diapers and even like the older people dealing with the poop, the pee, the throw up, the not for me.
I feel like you've answered the one that you wouldn't want to be. That's the
Wait,
next
is that what
question.
you asked?
No,
Oh.
no, that's okay. You've done number 9. Now let's go back to number 8. What job other than your own would you definitely want to attempt?
My bad.
All right.
um, I don't know if you've seen the TV show Emily in Paris.
I've
Um,
heard of it.
she's like a social media marketing person. I think that's so interesting. I, despite me loving science and all that jazz, I really like creating things. I had a YouTube channel for a period of time too. I just like creating things, and I think that'd
Yeah.
be so fun to do that as a job outside of a physician.
I think I watched one of your YouTube videos because I was doing my
Oh no.
research, and I think one of your YouTube videos was, sorry guys, I haven't like posted a video in like 8 or 9 months. And then it was another 8 or 9 months before you did your next one, and then it just stopped. So I don't know exactly. I think you were unboxing a camera. Was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
So we're not returning to our YouTube career. That's now put away, is it?
It's hard because when I was in college, I felt like my life was so exciting and I had so much to record because I just wanted to remember the exciting things about my life. But
Yeah.
now I'm in this like weird purgatory phase in between college and starting medical school where it's not the most exciting. Like I don't want to take somebody along while I'm dissecting a mice one day. I don't think anybody's going to want to watch that.
You don't know. The people are into all sorts of things. Never say never. I never thought people would be interested in hearing someone else eat. So maybe dissections is a thing. You never know. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Hmm. I think I'd want him to say that he's proud of me, I guess, because like I said, I mean, I want to be a physician. I came from a family of addicts. Nothing in my life has been easy. At least the physician part, I did choose the hard path. That's on me. But nothing in my life has been easy. And I'm a firm believer that what happened to me serves a greater purpose. Like I said, there are so many times in my life where I ask God, I'm like, why this? Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
And, my dad's addiction led me on the road to pageants, but it also led me on the road to becoming a physician. So it serves a greater purpose. And I
Yeah.
just want to be able to fulfill God's purpose for my life and hear that I fulfilled it and that he's proud of me and that my family up in heaven is also proud of me as well for breaking the cycle.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure they will be. And as I say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And I've never heard over the last probably period of 24 months, that's just been the saying that basically has summed up my life. Like, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Me too.
But Bailey, yeah, I feel you on that one. Bailey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
How did it feel coming on and talking with me after you've been subjected to hearing my voice on the podcast so often? Is it a bit weird?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very strange being on the other side of things.
Good. glad to know. It felt a bit weird, and then you'll be able to listen to your own interview back over on Spotify.
I don't think I want to hear my voice.
I had to, so if I have to, you have to too. Look, I'll keep you on the line for just a sec whilst I hang out with the audience. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll speak to you next time. Hi guys, thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in winning not just at pageantry, but at life, come on over to thepageantproject.com, giving out free weekly pageant coaching tips. You can get all the podcasts and interviews there as well. You can sign up for a member completely for free, doing weekly mock interviews and everything like that. So come on over to thepageantproject.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll speak to you again soon.